The city is a memory of faded frenzy, manic bliss. The country is a cliche, but I like it like this. At least up here I can breathe ozone-friendly air, and God is watching over me from my underwear.
Some say Yeoville's a state of mind. Looking back at my past, I felt town was reincarnated. Town being a place of my childhood. Yeoville was that reincarnation. Like any other place, the Yeoville of the late 90s had its ritual. Monday Blues was that platform where performers could interpret poetry and poets could be performers. Take Tembi, for instance, a sassy young woman. She asked, "What is it to know?" What is it to know? Friends, tell me. Is it to look hip and strut down Rockey Street? And Sandile came on board, that fiery, feisty young man who had so many scores to settle. He pledged, "Stay with me."
Stay with me when the sun rises from a western sky with silver spears lashing at earth and our youth, when the eastern horizon hangs smoke a celebration to a fading dream. Will you take my blistered hand to a kiss? That journey between reflex action and conviction, where moments flash from substance to emotion, and where we count seconds as instinct.
But Yeoville had that sense of serendipity. And one of them was a beat poet named Sinclair Bales.
The traffic lights are blooming in a special way. Fresh is the day, and from the dames abound with freshness. All the voices are well fitted, and all eyes with lilac chimes doth sound. Along the street past the cortege of cars, carrying out the corpses of the winter ways.
And later, Sandile and Sinclair got to a jamming session.
Sandile, when you were interviewing me in the garden of a house owned by a woman whom I thought was very mysterious, and I was suffering from encephalitis, which is a swollen brain, what did you think when I tried to persuade you to come with me to a chemist to buy a drug which would help me?
I thought you're gonna die soon, and I was worried that I don't know any beat poets. So you were the last of the beat poets that I knew. I actually didn't have money to pay for this medicine of yours, and I just thought that maybe if there's something good that they do for Yeoville is to just keep you a little tad longer and get all the information out of you. And when you're dead, I'll probably be famous on your behalf.
But out there on the streets, where we were all likely to meet, Monica was huddled up in her caravan in the stifling heat. Frederick, it seemed, was becoming the envy of the street, trading in his juicy fruits, a son of the soil from Ghana. But to trade with these fresh fruits to anyone who would buy. Woozy, uncertain, dangling his cloth. Waving at customers to get some small change. Let's take stock. There was Monica in her caravan, and the workers came by that afternoon, and many afternoons to come, despite the heat. They would wait and then have their food, and they ate. And Bushy sits secluded in a corner, waiting his turn. But Bushy, her man friend from the desert, has to find new ways to earn his keep. He liked to charm his customers in that dry sense of humor way that he had.
Yeah, maybe you can put it here. How many pictures do you want actually?
We'll have 3 of those, and maybe 2 avocados, yeah. 2 avocados. What do you think about
This is the quality one for.
Yeah.
This is the quality one for your fruit salad. And I think you forget a pawpaw.
No, that's fine. We'll come.
No, we want bananas as
You want bananas as
Yeah.
well?
Because he had to make a living for now, it seemed. And it's all that really mattered in his young life. Not knowing what lay ahead.
Ah, Mr. Cotton. Welcome.
Very busy.
Sit down.
Thank you. And yes, I'm going to sit next to you, so you have to behave yourself tonight. Yeoville has changed in the last 16 years, I can tell you. I mean, I don't have to tell you. Although I am not frightened to be in Yeoville. I like Yeoville. It's very convenient for me. I walk to the post office, I walk to the shops, and I have to walk because, for health's sake and so on. But Yeoville has changed and perhaps deteriorated as well. Some areas you have all the time, people were hijacked, necklaces snatched off their neck and assaulted and so on. And that's a little bit frightening.
Well, because the greater concentration of the religious Jewish community was concentrated both in Yeoville and in Observatory. And because we belonged to a synagogue called the Kollel, Yad Sha'ul, we felt very much part of it, and we really aspired to the great Rabbonim. Those are our teachers that led the institution called the Kollel. That's why we made Yeoville our home, and we felt very, very comfortable within Yeoville, majority of our friends, And eventually, as a matter of fact, my parents moved to Yeoville as well.
There are still schools operating in Yeoville. Unfortunately, many of our friends have moved either north or have gone overseas. There are still schools in Yeoville. I still feel very comfortable and happy in Yeoville. I know the people on the streets. I like the hawkers. This is my home.
In Yeoville, in the late 40s actually, I had an aunt who used to work here as a domestic servant. She worked in Francis Street, it was. So I would come from Pinville, coming to visit her, or coming to collect some food or monies for food at home. And it was strictly whites. If you were black to live in this suburb, you wouldn't live here. You had to be a house servant, live in the back rooms and that kind of a thing, you see.
They woke up one morning and there were newspaper posters plastered all over the place, which just bluntly stated District 60 cleared a white area. And people are still stunned by the whole thing. Nobody people see the buildings being thrown down and lorries coming in to cart people off to Cape Flats about 14 miles away.
So, to my surprise, it's me staying in Yeoville today, which is very, I feel, I don't know how I can put it, but you see, because Yeoville has always been very buzzy. It was happening even then, even when the whites were staying here.
When I first lived in Yeoville, which is back in the late 70s, Rockey Street was a very quiet community street. Tailors, bicycle shops, a typical village street really. What happened in the 80s was there was a sudden rise of restaurants, jazz bars, music places and so on. And the place became the center of entertainment culture in Johannesburg. Largely, I think, because of the informal nature of the area, and because Yeoville had this history of artists, politicians and so on, and also because it was basically non-racial. Not entirely non-racial, it was still apartheid South Africa, and it was still a white area with black people coming in on whites' terms, as it were. But there was a buzz that just didn't exist anywhere else. And so you began to have the development of a fairly chaotic, laissez-faire attitude towards everything. They were still old-style South Africans who still wanted a different kind of space on their own terms. In the old South Africa, you had this very repressive situation where if you saw a black person on the street, you arrested them.
In a very real sense, separate development is an act of self-defense. The whites just have to do some things that sometimes are not so pleasant, but this is just a requirement to survive in South Africa.
We have to live with our problems. It's a matter of race suicide which comes into the picture, we're not prepared for that.
We've kind of reached a plateau now in Yeoville where there's a way we can now start improving, I think, and trying to build a new Yeoville which is which actually reflects the new reality, which is all these people who've come from the rest of Africa, the fact that Yeoville is now 84% black. So I think there's opportunity now for developing a new Yeoville, a new peak, but different to what was in the past.
It started, I moved to Bellevue actually, which is now regarded as part of Yeoville, in about 1937. And I initially got involved because my best friend's father was a Bolshevik, and I got a little political education, and eventually I joined the Young Communist League. Joe Slovo and his family lived next door to us. I had no idea that Joe was involved in left politics until I met him at the Young Communist League. Well, at that stage, neither my husband nor I were listed. You know, somehow or another, we escaped the net. And we were able to carry on our activities, not above ground, of course. We worked underground until our arrest. That was in 1964. We were both arrested. And my husband was in the treason trial, but they still they didn't connect him with the Communist Party. And we were both in a trial that became known as the Fisher trial. And my husband was acquitted because he didn't have a state witness against him. I did, unfortunately. And so I was sentenced to 3 years in jail, and plus 90 days, it came to almost 4 years. Well, since I'm still here, you know, it must have a very special significance. The only thing is that we have to get rid of crime and grime, and I'm involved in that with a group of people calling themselves concerned citizens. And every Saturday afternoon, we clean up the area.
You know, there was this show, the African Jazz and Variety, which used to perform at the Selborne Hall in Johannesburg, and the white audience only. But amongst the white audience, then you'd get some nice people who would want to entertain you after the show. And so they would sneak us into their cars because we were not allowed to be in the city after 7, you know. So they would sneak us in their cars and bring us to their homes for parties here in Yeoville. And so we used to come to Yeoville after the show, which would be about after 11, you know, because the show would finish at about 10:30 or 11 o'clock. Then we would come to these people's homes at night in Yeoville, sneak in, close the curtains, draw the curtains, so that the policeman doesn't see there's a black girl or black boys in that house. So it was just one of those things, yes.
Voracious. In the middle of life, there is so much more. Learning nakedness repeatedly, I am quietly voracious.
These goods, these goods, these goods, they done well. These goods, these goods, these goods, they done well. they burn well. These goods, they suck, they spark, they bark, they cart, they start to teach how to start, to win more of fast start. These goods, these goods, these goods, they burn well. Motorcycle therapy, riding on the highway, God in my panties, wind in my hair, a chunk of burning metal roaring between my thighs. I'm an independent woman and it's 1999. Vanilla boy's gone chocolate, this lover's now my friend. He used to want me more than pot, he once was boring, now he's not. The primary attraction stems from all the stuff he owns, and when that boy rejects me, I want him to the bone. Motorcycle therapy, riding on the highway, I've forgotten all the losers that I've left behind. Sunshine sinking into me, demanding sensuality. Baby, let's blow this popsicle stand. The city is a memory of faded frenzy, manic bliss. The country is a cliche, but I like it like this. At least out here I can breathe ozone-friendly air, and God is watching over me from my underwear. Motorcycle therapy, riding on the highway, leaving behind the policy of need. We've forgotten our humanity and the economics of vanity. They've stolen our identity. Our deity's been found. Honey, let's blow them to the ground. I am God and God is me, but God is something greater. Slipping into body talk, essential cells, my faithful rock. The 90s was the decade when body and soul met. The 90s was the decade when all the women got wet. Well, cynicism allows much less, but I believe in dreaming. On a bike at 140, no one hears me screaming. It feels good to get it out. There's no such thing as fear. My instincts cry for freedom, so let's get out of here. Motorcycle therapy, riding on the highway, God in my panties, wind in my hair, a chunk of burning metal roaring between my thighs. I'm an independent woman, and it's 1999.
You can never know everyone in your neighborhood, but you can know some people. And what they leave is a memory, and hopefully one that puts a smile on your face.